Good afternoon, fellow citizens. Welcome to the Citizens Chat Show. The date of 14th January 2022. This is a Friday, and of course, this is where your conversation is always on the civil and political engagements across the country. And of course, we also go as far as hitting on some issues across the region. And today, of course, we have to discuss the governance issues that are going to dominate, of course, the 2022, the year that we are into, which is already running on the high speed in terms of activities around human rights, of course, the elections around the region. We know the politics around the region is also too tense. So we need to dissect and also have so much conversation around you and bring you into the know of some of these issues, and also important also bring you into the discussion for you to be part of the discussion. And of course, joined on the panel today, I have my panelists. Interestingly, it's a maiden for some of them, and I'll need to take them into an introduction. The first is Aboneka Micheal. Aboneka Micheal is a lawyer, and of course works with the Action Aid and human rights lawyer, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Aboneka, you're welcome.
Thank you, and I'm glad to be on the Citizen
Chat show,
and I'm indeed a citizen to come and talk about citizen things.
Thank you. Yeah. And this is your maiden appearance, right?
Yes, and I'm really glad.
Thank you. And yes, we hope to always see you around.
Yes, I hope that I can come back around. Yes.
You will. Then, of course, our usual and our regular panelist is Sarah Bireete, the Executive Director with the Center for Constitutional Governance. Also a lawyer and a human rights activist also. Sarah, you're welcome.
Glad to be back, and good afternoon, viewers.
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon. 2021, you're a farmer. Have you still carried the title into 2022? As we're ending the year, you're like, I'm now an official farmer.
Resilient or real economy. Is in the farming. I must ensure I have.
Now it is.
I must ensure I have food to eat for myself. And if there's a little surplus, I make some money.
No, thank you. We need to tap into that knowledge. Then finally, of course, we have Ndugu. You need to introduce yourself.
Yeah.
Okidi Christopher.
Okidi Christopher. I am Omuntu wa Wansi.
Because initially you were with the DP, and now I think you went.
No, I am fine. I have been the national youth leader of the Democratic Party, the immediate past national youth leader of DP.
Okay.
Yeah, but I am now a private citizen and
a lawyer,
but still very active. Yes, my background is law and political science.
Thank you.
Yeah,
and you made an appearance on the Citizens Chat Show.
Yeah, but not on Civic Space.
Civic Space. You know, you're a regular Civic Space TV. Yeah, thank you very much. And of course, we're waiting for our other guests, and also a regular, Awich Pola, the Director of External Services with the NRM. I hope he makes it, but we are in touch. He will join into the conversation as we go on. And of course, talking about the governance issues, human rights has dominated this week.
Yes.
And we've had arrests that have been there, going to court, habeas corpus. Then there's that whole process that has been, but also someone arrested and the whole time they're not aligned into court for some time. Yes. We need to really have this conversation. And maybe I'll need to start possibly with you, Aboneka, because of course you're closest to me. People always grow this fast. Sure. Yes, and being a maiden. So we're discussing what has been the net gain of laws like the Human Rights Enforcement Act in Uganda in light of the ongoing spate of violations.
Yes, thank you. And Uganda is interesting. Like every week, there is something. Like we can never be there, and we are saying, "Oh, can we take a break this week?" Like no drama. There is always drama. There is always someone being arrested, someone who were pleading with people, please, can the family see them? Can you produce them to court? Pleading with schools, please reducing school fees. Like it is always drama. You see, human rights is not something that is a luxury that those who can afford. No, you are human. As if the moment that you are human, then all the rights around you must be respected. must be protected, and then there are those that the state must implement. Now, we've seen a lot of, and let me tell you, it is bad that what happened, but it is good in terms of jurisprudence, in terms of exposing what our system looks like. We've been talking about the enforcement of the Human Rights Act, or the other way around. It comes in to enforce, operationalize Article 50. And what is interesting is that there have been few cases that have been litigated under that. Interestingly, there's one we are pursuing under that, but people actually still don't know it, including judicial officers. It is sad that we should go beyond just making these laws, but people should understand them. But the most important thing is, I still don't understand why to arrest someone you need to beat them. You need to torture them. It's like you've already passed judgment. You know, they are poking you, they are beating you, you can't see your relatives. And what is it? Then what is Article 23 about? I've said this time and again that I want someone to come and tell me whether they have ever experienced the entirety of Article 28 and 23, where they come and tell you, hello, my name is Sergeant so-and-so. I have come. I have an arrest warrant. You've committed this crime, or you're about to commit this crime, and please, I'm here to arrest you, or can you accompany me to? I am looking forward to that.
That one we watch in the movies.
Yeah, because you see,
we watch Article 28 in the movies.
Like, why is it even there anyway? Why is it even there? I'm looking forward. I know everyone is watching. I'm looking forward, the leaders, the police, for such. You even like, this is even interesting. People will not be running away. You won't need to bundle up people in the pickups. There's supposed to be a human face while you're enforcing human rights. But people come and they have already judged you in their mind that you're a thief. They start beating you. So like the story of Kakwenza and many Ugandans who have ever since the 2021 elections, I've never seen court. Okay? When some noises are made, then they appear. What is this selective justice thing about? Human rights must be universally applied. So I think that, so for the wins is that this case has exposed. People are defying court orders and they want to only walk away with it. I'm looking forward to a day where we shall have a real concept of court. Whether it is the IGP who is in that order, whether any officer, and the court says, you have been held in contempt of court, I am either sentencing you to 2 weeks in Chitani. That's where we should go. Everyone should play their part in terms of human rights. So by and large, this week has been an interesting but also sad that we thought these things were different. We thought this is another Chisanja. We thought that securing your future means you must be first alive for your future to be secured. But how do you secure my future when I'm tortured? So what is this promise that they promised us? So to me is that...
I think the disappearance has been around for 3 weeks now.
Yes, close to 3 weeks. But first, we don't care.
27.
As long as it is after 48 hours, produce the person before court. And number two, you produce them before court in absence of their lawyer, in absence of their relatives. They cannot actually apply for bail. What is that? We've seen instances where people have been arraigned in court at night, which the judicial officer sat and actually remanded that person. Which kind of law did they study? Which kind of human rights? Are they human? If it is them, so it has to come back to us. That even as a judicial officer, you're exercising that judicial authority on behalf of Ugandans. That's what Article 126 says. So everyone should be part and parcel of promoting human rights.
Interesting. Thank you very much, Aboneka, for that open. Sarah, we're still around the net gains on the enforcement of the Human Rights Act. How far are we? In light of the violations
I think you need
that
to
have
change the question. Do we have net gains or net losses?
there could be other arguments in
Just in case.
The gain are in Rose. Rose cannot implement themselves. laws that, like the constitution, you have to give it life through acts of parliament, but also actions of the people, especially duty bearers. You have to, so you can have beautiful laws, and Uganda is known for having beautiful laws, beautiful projects, but those ideas are
ratifying
implemented by
anything.
our, yes, and ratifying anything that has been signed. But the implementation is nowhere to be found in most of these issues. As Aboneka was submitting, I remembered a situation where our team of judicial officers from DPP, Attorney General, and courts went for a study tour and benchmarking in the Netherlands. And when they were being taken around the detention centers, the head of police there had his brother in detention for a traffic offense. So when they reached the remand, he said, "This is my brother, he had a traffic offense and is here with me for 1 month." So the judge, who was on that delegation for Uganda, name withheld, says, "How can you allow your brother to come to prison? Are you serious?" He took his Ugandan context and mindset of saying, "I'm the law. So the national laws don't apply to me or my family." And the same impunity that we saw around Kakwenza's detention. Kakwenza's unfortunate illegal detention has acted like a strong wind blowing off a grass-thatched hut. When a wind comes and you don't have a proper foundation for your house and it blows up everything, then whoever is passing sees the inside of your house. So the whole world has seen the pretense about Uganda on being a constitutional governance, the pretense of respecting the law, the pretense of having institutions, yet one individual, by virtue of being a president's son, has the audacity to abuse all institutions and processes because he's offended by a tweet, even when he's always on Twitter abusing other people. We have seen also a situation where, and I hope that in courts of law, this time the defense lawyers of Kakwenza can raise the issue around the doctrine of clean hands. The doctrine of clean hands is that if you have been in abuse of principles and values of society, then you should not benefit from equitable reliefs from courts of law claiming that the same abuse has been done to you. Ever since President Museveni came to power, he's been using at times insulting language. And I will mention a few of his statements. He is on record for having called past leaders swine.
Swines, yeah.
That's insulting language. He's on record for having mentioned the abuse Dikiza Besigye for the times he has run against him, and there's a Supreme Court record. Every petition against him has his opponents saying he used offensive communication, including saying Kiza Besigye is going to die. He went to my sub-county where I am born and said that he hunted his animal, so he can't let people eat his hunt his meat. And he went to Kabala and said he cannot hand over power to hyenas. And in Kororo he did mention that the paper cannot get him out of power. And recently in the just concluded elections, he said Chagulanyi's supporters were stupid. All this is offensive communication. So under the doctrine of clean hands, nobody should be charged for for using offensive language against the president. Unfortunately, by virtue of being a fountain of honor, he's the trendsetter in this country. So what trend has he seen? Has he said when it comes to communication? He has set the trend of offensive communication himself, especially against his political opponents. And the records are very clear. So if courts applied the doctrine of clean hands, no Ugandan should be charged for using offensive communication against the president, because he has made that his trademark.
Yeah.
Away from that, when you look at abuse of the Constitution, I know that there are proposals which, if the people fronting them are serious, then it's time for Uganda to write another constitution, because they do not fit in the basic structure of the 1995 constitution, where power rests with the people. So if we want to take away power from the people, then let's write the 2022 constitution and move away and totally discard the 1995 constitution, because the proposals do not fit in the framework of the 1995 constitution, where all power rests with the people, and that's an entrenched article and a key defining factor for all institutions and all persons that exercise power in Uganda. But away from that, so we have this constitution that we consistently abuse, that people only hold for swearing-in purposes, and the duty bearers and other persons think that they are above the constitution. I did whisper into Aboneka's submission that Article 28, Ugandans watch it only in movies. It does not apply to them. Yet that is an entrenched provision of our constitution.
Yes.
But the man of arrest envisaged under the 1995 constitution is only stuff for movies. Because the
only
reverse
admire.
happens. Because the reverse happens. So as a result, when people are suspected of having committed a crime, the best they can do, where possible, is to run away. Because the people who exercise power to arrest them act like thugs, act like terrorists, and do not conduct themselves in a manner prescribed under Article 28 of the Constitution. It is not that people run from the law, but people run from a possibility of where none of their family members knows where they are detained from. They run from a possibility of torture. They run from a possibility of death in custody. And they run from a possibility of failure to have their day in court to defend themselves. And that's what has created a thuggery environment in this country.
I think the only time the Article 28 was seen is the 2016 elections, when the late IGP of police arrested Amama Mbabas in a very soft way to the police.
Yeah.
And if you see all arrests of political opponents, I think that was the only clean way of doing it.
That was a movie.
Yeah. and of course, they even never told him whether they are arresting
it was
him or
criminal,
detaining him.
but at least
But
it was a little
It
soft.
was civil.
Yeah, it was civil.
So why can't they do that to everyone?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, Okidi, from Sarah's submission, and of course Aboneka adding on what also Aboneka said, we are discussing the issue of the enforcement of Human Rights Act. The gains really that we see from them, how far, where do we score?
You know, it is like asking again out of a very isolated circumstance. You know, we need to look at Uganda broadly and then place in context whether that law really has any gain or there are instead reversals, you see. But talking about democracy, which is the system of governance that upholds individual liberty, rights, rule of law, and all these institutions, transparency and accountability, looking at the entire aspect of democracy. In fact, actually, all of us have a duty to ensure that Uganda's democracy works. All of us have a duty to ensure that human rights function well in Uganda. In fact, it is argued by democracy scholars that a democratic citizenry should precede a democratic society. Because what Sarah is talking about, that Uganda has very beautiful policies, very beautiful laws, but the practice is different. In fact, even the Constitution of Uganda, by the way, is a beautiful constitution. In fact, when I look at that constitution, forget all the machinations, all the shenanigans of the political elite. that make the entire governance a problem. When you look at the constitution, you actually see hope that if it is implemented to the letter. So what actually that means that a constitution without the spirit of constitutionalism is like a boat on land. It will never move. So the most important thing is that all of us as citizens need to work very hard in terms of what having a democratic society and a society that respects human rights. In fact, the first thing actually as a country, because Uganda actually is a very dysfunctional state, a severe dysfunctional state. Because one, up to now, we do not know how Uganda is organized and managed. The system we are used to for a long time. In fact, the philosophy that runs this country, nobody knows it. In fact, there is an absence of a philosophy. And yet a philosophy should organize the soul of the country. Everyone should really know basic that I must respect Aboneka's right to his opinion. That is a value, you know?
Yeah.
Those are basics. In 1948.
Yes, you see, yes, that you talk and I listen to you. In fact, I saw Sarah's tweet recently quoting, is it Voltaire?
Yes.
That Voltaire said, I don't need to actually agree with your opinion. But even when I disagree with your opinion, I will defend to death your right. Now, you see, these are values.
Yeah.
And what does human rights do in law? In law, by the way, there is one function of human rights. That is civilization. Human rights is the conveyor belt upon which the law contributes to civilizing a society.
Yeah.
That humanity is very important. My body should never be touched. I should never be tortured. Inviolability of my body as a human being. That one is not more than just a normative statement in law, but it is actually the mere fact that I'm a human being. I deserve that. We are all here seated. We have different brains. Why must you assume that we are going to think alike?
And that
It is
we
not
should think
possible.
alike.
Actually, if lawyers think alike,
Yeah.
then you know there's a
stalemate.
problem.
Yeah, there's a problem.
Even if
So-
they agree, their
Yes.
reasons for agreement
Yeah.
will be different.
We agree differently.
So this is just civilization that we should aspire
that.
as a country.
Yeah.
We should aspire as a country to reach a point where our differences of opinion do not matter. It doesn't matter where you come from. In fact, by the way, if Uganda can build nation, in fact, human rights, by the way, human rights across the world has been achieved through a lot of struggles. In Britain, the Magna Carta was a settlement that you see, let us agree that we have a basic right to livelihood, to an election franchise, to vote, as basic as it is. So the Human Rights Enforcement Act in Uganda is a good law, just like Uganda has many other laws. But it is actually the institutions. We need to strengthen institutions to make them work. We need a judiciary. We need actually a judiciary with the judicial activists.
Yeah.
People like people who can come up boldly and say, this is an habeas corpus. In fact, Justice Platt, in that case of ex parte Matovu, Justice Platt, first of all, the lawyer on the other side was Aboneka Micheal, whose pleadings were very faulty. They were very faulty pleadings. But Justice Platt said, you see, this concerns the right of a citizen, a right of a citizen. And in UK, where the writ of habeas corpus originated, it is because as a leader, you must love your citizen. Your duty is to protect your citizen. So if a subject of the Queen is missing, he must be presented dead or alive. That is what we call the writ of habeas corpus. So, and most of these things work because of values, our psyche, culture, and our discipline to have this. So I think Uganda's biggest struggle there is, first of all, the struggle to ensure that we all understand what we talk about. Because, by the way, if you ask President Museveni and Muhoozi and the NRM and his NRM cabal, they will actually tell you Uganda is a very democratic country. You know, I listen to these things every day. And they say Uganda is a very democratic country. NRM has achieved our 10-point program. In fact, top of the 10-point program was actually democracy. But 35 years, is this their view? Yeah. But 35 years later, the question is this the democracy they were talking about?
Yeah.
So in conclusion, the Human Rights Enforcement Act, first of all, by the way, that you remember, Aboneka, that Human Rights Enforcement Act came because the Human Rights Enforcement law before was actually challenged in that case of Church Ambrose Bukenya. And so it was, in fact, actually, they said that whatever it is said is merely directory, but it is not a force of law because it was actually challenged by the AG. So civil society and many other human rights players said, but no, we need to bring this thing back in a proper way. But now, even with all the efforts to really have it back, it seems not to be functioning from the experience we hear. What is happening to our friend Rukira Basaija Kakwenza. Yeah.
And maybe just before,
Yes.
maybe they need to tell us what is the problem with implementing these laws. Like, where do they find the problem?
And that's why I want to ask you, why is the judiciary weakened and, of course, unable to really come up when these violations are happening?
No, I think the judiciary does its job. And what I'm saying for me is, like in this case, if I were the judge in this matter, my order says, bring the body before me. Don't tell me we've taken the body to Chitalia. I want to see, and I would stick on that, that as I, the judge, I told you, I want to see Sarah. Don't tell me I have taken Sarah to Chitalia. Okay? Now, that takes judicial activism, enlightenment. That's where now you can say judicial officers fail us. As a judicial officer, how can you preside over court at 7 p.m. after one cannot even pay for bail? There are no lawyers. That one happened. It happens a lot. During the lockdown, a number of people were actually arraigned in court and charged in the night at Uganda Road Court. The officer, the judicial officer that sat in that courtroom, what was she or he thinking about? So they fail us.
Orders from above.
Yeah, orders from above.
I think that is why we say all of us should actually be agents.
Yes.
I think the claim then, if I can remember, is that they didn't want to hold people in one place because of the spread. So they needed to quickly
but again,
know whom to send in or not.
They put them back.
Court hours are defined.
Yeah, court hours are defined. You
So
can't
then
access
where
your
would they
lawyer.
keep them? That was the issue. Where would they
But
keep
where
them?
were they keeping them before they brought them to court?
They were arrested. You know, kept being arrested. Then they said, okay, the court process should go on.
Yeah, but you see, the thing is that you cannot, because there was no justification whatsoever. You know, we're in a democratic country, they tell us, where we have laws and we are allowed to play by them. So what is the problem? Why can't you play by the rules that you said we should go by? I've even argued before that if these things are too hard, let's go back to our chiefs, whatever they decide, if the thing is too hard. Sarah here is giving hope, is saying, can we write a new constitution? The document that speaks to us than pretending. And I want to say that there is nothing called pseudo-democracy. Pseudo means hybrid. There is nothing like pseudo-democracy. It is democracy. The bedrock of democracy is human rights. And I like his point of civilization. It is only courteous and civil for you to ask my name, to tell you, by the way, I have come to arrest you. Not to just come. And by the way, there are international standards of arrest. How many times do these officers, they even come in plain clothes?
Yes.
You can't actually now enforce the Human Rights Enforcement Act because you must mention an individual. I've seen police officers who remove their name tags.
They do that more often.
So how am I going to go and actually take an action against an officer I don't know? So I think that we need to stop. People say we lament a lot, but that's all that there is. And I want to ask a question: what is wrong with implementing the laws as they are? And also, those in charge, do these people have supervisors? Do the supervisors have supervisors? We have the fountain of honor. We have the prime minister. Let me give an example. Why did it have to take the prime minister to go and stop forceful vaccination on the road? Yet we've been calling upon the minister. It had to be the prime minister to stop it. You don't know whether someone has been vaccinated, whether they have just forgotten their card in Kampala. You are vaccinating them at every vaccination point.
But also the
giving them
content.
The content, you don't
The
even
content,
know.
is it water? We have seen water here.
Yeah,
People being
before.
vaccinated with
So
water.
I asked a question. So if that passenger dies in that taxi, who is liable? The RDC? Is it the driver who allowed to stop? Who is liable? Like, we can't just be for 35 years when we should have grown both in terms of saying yes, in terms of age, but also in terms of what is our democracy, what is our trajectory. And it will be unfair for us to paint it all rosy and say everything is okay, and yet not everything is okay. We appreciate democracy is not just about how many laws. It's not just about peace, not just absence of war. We have wars every day. School fees is a war. Lack of food is war. Lack of respect for human rights is war. So it is okay that citizens need to talk and they need to be listened to. And lastly, on that issue, is that I want to repeat this, especially judiciary, because I'm a practicing advocate. Judicial authority is derived from the people and exercised according to the values of the people. That's the opening statement of Article 126. So when you're there and saying orders from above, make sure you remind Sarah. But Article 126 is saying judicial authority is derived from the people and shall be exercised according to the values of the people. And you choose a person over the people. The person is the one that is, we are paying a lot of taxes to pay those guys, and they don't pay. I'm sorry to come off like that. They don't even pay tax, but we are paying for their survival. And then you sit in that chair, and you receive a phone call, and you make a decision that is actually not acceptable. So we need to protect the prosecutors. How do you appear before a judicial officer without a defense counsel and you ask for an order? So these things have happened. They keep transferring. I've had this as in my practice. They tell you that your client has been remanded to next week. As you go back, they divert them and take them to another court. Then you hear that a trial is going on. You're like, what is happening? What do you mean there is a trial going on? So we need to stop pretending. Everyone is saying Uganda is okay. They show pictures of hills and cows and matoke and coffee, but those hills without people is nothing.
Yeah, interesting. I need to bring this up. So do you think now then you would agree that the judiciary is weak and it can't do anything to the violations that are happening in the country?
We can compare Uganda's situation with the case of state capture that Zuma is battling. When you read actually the grounds against Zuma for state capture, if Uganda had the same capacity and capabilities, we should have had our own trial of state capture in 1990, even before the constitution. Because our level of state capture, and I don't even know how we shall redo it beyond NRM. So we are at severe levels of state capture, where individuals without even any elective post are more powerful than all institutions, including Parliament of Uganda. Individuals of the first family is now larger than Uganda. because if we talk of individuals, people might start looking at their fathers. No. The first family is larger than Uganda. We are at the level of times when the likes of Kamuzu Banda were in power. You know, when I was growing up listening to BBC Africa, there was always that news item on the News for Africa. Kamuzu Banda is too old. He no longer knows even when he was born, but he is still president of Uganda, of the
Malawi.
Malawi. Then, and they had even written in the constitution that the
Yes.
president shall be
As Dr. Hastings Kamuzu
Kamuzu
Banda.
Banda. It was an article in the constitution.
Article 1.
So I know we don't have such an article, but it's an unwritten law.
Yeah.
And now the first family feels more entitled, more superior than even the royal family of Britain, that is a ceremonial head of state, and endless and uninterrupted. So we have this situation where, and Kakwenza's case really demonstrated this. For those who had doubt, Uganda is democratic through posturing and for international relations. We want to sit on table with the big boys, like the recent talk. So we want to hang out.
The club of big boys.
The big boys.
We want to hang out with the big boys and posture as a Democrat. So that's why we have these laws.
Yeah.
That's why we have these laws. That's why we ratify everything, because we want to hang out with the big boys.
We sign them and
Yes.
then forget. Like the ACDEG, it
Yes.
was signed in 2008. Up now, they have not ratified.
Yeah, so we do these things for purposes of hanging out with the big boys. We are glad that the world is beginning, although really belatedly, to see the truth of what Uganda is. So at the recent Democratic Summit in the US, we were denied the chance to hang out with the big boys. And I wish
It continues.
yes, because we don't fit in that club. If we want to hang out with the big boys,
Let us do what
let
big
us
boys
do what it takes.
Yeah,
Yes.
what the big boys do. We do what the big boys do. We
Yes.
respect human rights. Yeah. You can't be a small boy and you want to hang out with the big
As
boys.
we get to our second question, I would like Okidi to discuss the big boys in that context of human rights,
Yes.
and make a brief conclusion to it.
Yes, actually,
Then we get to the public debt issue.
This is it's a very good social way of making people understand Ugandan politics. In fact, by the way,
Socialize our problems.
yeah,
Really
in fact, by the way, political analysts should invest so much in social language that makes people understand and get agitated to come and engage in the politics. I used to tell people that, you see, Uganda's leadership of President Museveni, they just use elections as a deodorant. Of course, they organize a bogus election, then it is like a deodorant
put a castor
where
oil
they
and
spray
Without bathing.
without bathing. And then when they go to New York and the UN headquarters, they smell good
cool,
with the
yeah.
big boys. Yeah, but you know that is not sustainable. It is like the story of bullshit. You know, they say bullshit can take you up, but bullshit cannot keep you there. It is just because one time cows decided to defecate, and in their refuse there were some good things edible for the birds. So some two birds came and ate the cow shit and became very satisfied, got a lot of energy, and flew up a tree. And then a farmer just got his catapult and shot it immediately from where it was. So because of the bullshit, they got energy to go up. But now the bullshit could not keep them there. So I think there is no other way other than doing it the right way. Uganda, by the way, as a state is a nation. The building is in progress, and that is why we need to invest all our energies to see that we clip some of these undesirable activities that do not augur well in a democratic society, like human rights violation. I think I'm very happy when I heard when I saw civil society come out to help Kakwenza, you know, Aaron Kiza alone cannot achieve that end.
You can't.
But when we all add our voices, you even saw embassies now come out. Even United Nations, refugee, UNHCR came in. So I think whatever we do is not in vain.
So the big boys came out.
Yes.
Yeah, the big boys eventually came out and said, "No, you need to sort out your house. You can't be chilling. You can't be chilling with
With
us,
us.
big boys, and yet you've not paid school fees for your children. Yet you've not paid school fees for your children. First, go and pay school fees for your children. Then come and chill with us, the big
So
boys.
are you saying
Because for us, we have already paid our
we
fees.
want to chill out with the big boys while we are still putting on pampers?
That is the problem.
With
With
the baby bottles.
yes, with baby bottles.
Thank you very much. I think we are tending to the closure of this, but I would want to give us at least a minute or two to discuss the debt burden that is ongoing. We need to have these issues, at least for people to really out there understand them. And of course, our public debt is soaring over the past quarter.
Almost 70%, yeah.
Yes.
The GDP.
You see, and of course, the argument, and of course, from government is that it's being spent on public infrastructure. What is your take?
I have a problem with these debts. First of all, who negotiates them? Is there some, let me use the word like people know, some deal that we don't know, that someone is there, their job is to get a debt for Uganda and get commission? Because the appetite,
That is how it works.
the appetite of these debts, I don't understand. Who negotiates these debts for all of us to pay? Okay? Who negotiates them? Do we need everything? So I think that for me, that's the fundamental question. Number two, how do you borrow money to come and buy a double cabin and you don't have a mobile testing facility? Priorities are distorted. Okay? I would understand to say we are borrowing money because every hospital in every sub-county is going to have a testing facility for COVID and further pandemics. I was saying in the morning, what happens if tomorrow we have leprosy or chicken pox or another epidemic? How are we going to handle it? So the borrowing can be okay, but for whom are you borrowing? Where are you taking it? So if we should borrow for productive sector, not to pay fees, not to buy double cabins, I just don't understand. And not to pay allowances. I was told of a story of how people spend more money in going to benchmark. But what is all that? So for me, as I conclude on this matter, is the debt burden is high, and ultimately it is us, the taxpayers, to shoulder it. So they will tax us more. They are always increasing the taxes on fuel and what have you, in the direct taxes. We pay as we earn. We struggle. We pay.
Media.
But let me ask you a
Internet
question.
tax.
Apart from the black tarmac, I don't know what else I enjoy out of my tax. Okay? So I think that it is important that we should be tangible. Taxation is non-quid pro quo. But to me, taxation is quid pro quo. We give government power, we give it taxes, and we expect effective service delivery. So when you borrow that money, the minister should tell us this is what we used it for. And that then we say, oh, okay, then we shall pay. But you can't be my maid at home. You borrow 1 million shillings to buy data for Snapchat. How does that support my family? That's what is happening. Yeah.
Interesting.
So I think we need to move beyond that. Yeah. But borrowing is not a problem as a source of financing for a country, but how it is done and what it is used for is the major problem.
Thank you. I think, Sarah, he talks about taxation, and of course, in there, as you're going to discuss the public debt and your take on that, there's also our tax regime. Is it progressive enough to actually support the local industries? Because that also affects our levels of borrowing.
Well, the lending institutions internationally put up a limit against which countries can borrow. And the maximum is 50% of your GDP. In the last report by Bank of Uganda on the state of the economy in June last year, they put our public debt at 52% of GDP. The Charter for Fiscal Responsibility for the next 5 years, presented by the Minister of Finance, stated that debt will only increase up to 54% and then be reversed. And the reason, their justification was getting out of the pandemic. Before I discuss whether we have progressive taxes or not, I think it's important for the viewer out there to know that just this week, Ministry of Finance presented a supplementary budget, and half of the money is for renovating State House and state lodges countrywide. Just yesterday, the day of opening of schools, according to Daily Monitor report, 3 roofs of schools collapsed on children and one child died. And these are government schools. But our leadership is thinking about their comfort, dear viewer, and they want billions of money to renovate state lodges countrywide and State House.
While the roof is collapsing on your child.
While your children are dying with the government schools collapsing on your children. That defines the priority, and part of that money will be borrowed. As we talk now, we have 73% to 73 trillion borrowed funds. It's above 55% of GDP, and we have 7 trillion interest in local borrowing that we service, and we have a total of 17 trillion in the budget for debt servicing, just paying interest on loans. So the question you should ask out there is, what are our priorities as a country? And is there value for money in these monies we are borrowing? And maybe it's time to start the campaign that Kenyans run on Don't Lend Kenya. I think it's time. We should have done that yesterday. We slept on the job. I think we need to tell the international community to stop lending Uganda.
Thank you very much, sir. I think those are profound issues that we need to really allow our viewers to really think through. Okidi, your final submission on this, and we break off.
Yeah, me, first of all, I think where the problem is because Uganda got it wrong on state scope. Because, you know, you cannot have a state that is everything, that does everything, you know. Actually, Africa, I have argued before that Africa's problem with debt governance is just a direct result of their problem in terms of defining what a state is to them. Because for me, as Okidi, what is the kind of state I would want? Me, I would want a minimal state. A state that if it can assure me that it will provide roads.
Minimal and efficient.
Yes, minimal and efficient. Provide roads, provide policies, rule of law. That is a public good that a state must provide, and provide it well. And yes, and have policies and enforce them. For me, once I have that state, I will put my food on my table. I will buy pads for my daughters. I will do all these other things. But for us, we seem to want, there's a philosophy, government to yambe. So now, such a state, it borrows now to impress people. You see, because everyone is saying government jango to yambe, you know. So for me, as Ugandans, let us agree, what is the state we need? Once we can have a minimal state that is efficient, the tax regime will be okay. The tax definitely will provide an enabling environment for private sector to triumph. And you know, it is private sector that runs the economy. You see? It is the private sector that. But the problem with Uganda is also, you have government, which is the biggest spender in the economy. And then you have dead private sectors. So everyone is now coming to say, government, come and help me. Then you have a public debt, which surpasses your GDP. Our GDP as Uganda is just 32.5. Nigeria is actually 400 billion GDP. Now you see. So for me, but how do we address the problem of public debt? Public debt also, in fact, borrowing also comes with legitimacy. If a state, by the way, is legitimate and it has legitimacy, it will not borrow so much, you see? But those who borrow so much are just some organized group of criminals who have taken over state power, and so they borrow to aggrandize themselves. When you talk about these roads, whose trailers travel on those roads? Why Uganda doesn't have a railway is because the owners of the trailers are policymakers. So there's no incentive to have a railway system. And the biggest industry to that where we channel corruption is actually the public goods in Uganda. We borrow and deceive Ugandans that we are borrowing to provide for you public goods. And yet we are borrowing in the name of public goods just to steal them because there's no public good in Uganda. That is my opinion.
Let me brief it before.
Yes.
You know, viewers need to ask. There's a time we borrowed money to construct a specialized hospital in Oluvowa. And all the money was availed to the so-called investor.
What
Where
happened?
is this hospital? How come it can't treat Ugandans during a pandemic?
Yes.
Critical question. Thank you very much, our viewers. And of course, that has been our first half of this conversation, as intriguing, as exciting, and of course, the energies are on here. And thank you very much for being our ardent followers. Every Friday afternoon, 2 to 4 p.m., we are always here on Civic Space TV. Kindly follow these discussions are on our Civic Space TV on our YouTube. Click subscribe onto that channel and get all the updates that are into the week that happen on Civic Space TV. We have a lot of programming throughout the spectrum that you would really benefit you as a citizen of this country. But also follow this discussion on Chat Show hashtag on Twitter. We are on there. The hashtags are there. Civic Space TV hashtag. Also on Chat Show UG hashtag. We're also doing these conversations. They are continuous throughout. We always have these conversations. And of course on Facebook, we are live on Facebook and also on Instagram. Please follow these discussions. Be part of the Civic Space conversations. Let's get back after this break.
Violence, anger and hatred, misery, loss and pain. No, this shouldn't be the situation after elections. Fellow youth and Ugandans, now that elections are over, it is time to embrace our differences in opinion, political affiliations, and other issues that tend to divide us. We need to refocus on all the things that are beneficial to us, our families and friends. It's our duty to restore peace in our communities, and even as we participate in democratic processes, it's important that we do it with dignity. Say no to post-election violence. This message is brought to you by Center for Constitutional Governance in partnership with Action Aid Uganda.
Thank you very much, our viewers, for tuning in. And of course, the break was interesting, and of course, it ended on a high. We are powered by Inspire Africa, and of course, that's what and gives us the energies to do and discuss what we think is, of course, right for our country, and also look for solutions. Of course, I need to thank you, my panelists, for joining us today, Aboneka, and I hope you come in again next time. Sarah, thank you for always being with us here, and of course, Okidi, thank you very much. We're getting into our second part, and of course, the first part we're discussing Uganda. We need to just move out a little out of Uganda and see how much we can bring to you. And in there, I need us to start with the politics in the region. Kenya is doing politics, is in a political fever. We just, of course, concluded ours, which gave us quite a number of lessons. And of course, we have South Sudan that is also in the contention. So I need to let me this time start with Okidi. Then I'll go to this round. What is the future? Because for you are part of the elections. You're actively involved in elections, and of course, you are part of the past elections. What is the future of electoral democracy in the Great Lakes region?
Yeah, the future of electoral democracy in the Great Lakes region has been documented by very many people. Micheal Arong wrote about Kenya, saying Kenya, the politics of Kenya is all about our turn to eat, you know. and then Colombian scholars like this gentleman, Jack Snyder and Manisfield, also said in the Great Lakes region of Africa, elections are about electing to fight. You know, after elections, you immediately descend to fighting each other, like what happened in Kenya in post-election violence in 2007.
Yeah.
And then in Uganda, we saw what happened in the November riots. Up to now, no one has been prosecuted over that. But also, general elections in Uganda have been very violent elections. The contest has been on the part of certain players, of course. They've really suffered a lot in terms of state violence. So, what actually this says is that we need a completely new strategy on elections and electoral democracy in Africa. Because what we're actually having is not democratic elections. We are doing votocracy, you know?
Votocracy.
Votocracy.
An event.
Yes, an event. People are just voting. The votes don't
Or
even
they
count,
are
by the
voted
way. Yes.
Or you
What
voted
they are
for.
voted for, the votes don't even count. So, and by the way, that is the sad story of South Sudan. South Sudan is a very young country created out of a referendum in 2009. And about 5 years later, in 2013, there was a fallout between the two top politicians who also even command the means of violence, Riek Machar and Salva Kiir. And then after that again, there was another fallout. Then IGAD came in. At some point, the IGAD agreement didn't work. Then they came to State House in Entebbe to meet Museveni, both Riek Machar and Salva Kiir. And then they say that they have now they've extended another 100 days. And so they are called, they even say now the government is going to be called a revitalized government of transitional unity. So when you actually look at all that process, because what informs peace building, in fact, democratization is a very important tool in peace building. That is the liberal peace approach. That one, let the guns stop. Let us then incubate or build systems and institutions within that weak state, because conflict, by the way, disrupts, displaces, and may sometimes even kill institutions. So let us build institutions. And now remember, if you're building peace based on a democracy approach or the liberal peace approach, then you're not going to run away because from voting and democracy, because democracy is actually one of the ways upon actually legitimacy of which you legitimate a particular political process. So for me, I think South Sudan is hurrying with elections. That is a fact. Because
Wasn't
even
that
right
the
now,
roadmap in the peace agreement?
yeah, you see the roadmap in the peace. Let me tell you, by the way, all the two players in South Sudan have already fallen out of the constitutional process. Because South Sudan is supposed to have a permanent constitution, and then based on the permanent constitution, they organize elections. Now, you're organizing elections based on what? What rules are going to moderate the competition, the democratic competition at elections? So, short of that, I think South Sudan has just settled for votocracy, not democratization or democracy. And that has actually been the story of the Great Lakes. Because even in Rwanda...
Sorry, just on that,
Yes.
I want to take your power. So do you think they have leeway to say, okay, we are not ready, let's push it? Do you think they still have leeway to do that?
Everyone, by the way, in fact, most of the stakeholders are actually interested in South Sudan, first of all, finishing its constitutional process. Because when you look at that new constitution of South Sudan, it has issues within the body politics of South Sudan which has not yet been addressed. For example, Chapter 5 of their constitution is going to be on transitional justice. So now transitional justice deals with questions of reparations, memory, reconciliation, and all these other aspects. Because, by the way, a united, reconciled citizen can give a state more better democratic outcomes in terms of elections than a divided people who have not yet even fully developed confidence on being an independent state.
Thank you very much, on Okidi. Sarah, of course, as you're going to give us some talk about the general Great Lakes, the democracy of the Great Lakes region. I also want you to just hint on South Sudan, given the recent South Sudan, the prospects of its recent history. Do you think there are any prospects of a free or a credible electoral process in that region currently?
Well, the comprehensive peace agreement for South Sudan that ended the fighting between forces by Riek Machar and Salva Kiir, where Uganda deployed troops that literally kept Salva Kiir's government in power when it should have collapsed. And so they are key opponents. One, first of all, the agreement came with a transition agreement, a transitional government with 8 vice presidents. Each of the vice presidents has a thematic area. There is a vice president for governance. There is a vice president for minority groups.
So they created a big boy club.
President.
Vice president.
Blotted administration.
So yes, but I think the purpose was to incorporate the people that were at the fighting end, the leaders of the fighting factions. But also beyond the formation of this huge presidency, because that's literally shared presidency, it is important to note that the armies that were at opposite fighting forces have failed to reintegrate to the extent that they put on party colors. So the armies under Riek Machar put on the colors they were putting on. The armies under Salva Kiir still put on the colors. There is no national uniform even for the army. So there is no central command. There is no, so that notwithstanding, how can South Sudan get out of this situation? Is the shared presidency sustainable? I don't think so. The shared presidency was not supposed to make this permanent. It's a transition. As much as they've not written the constitution, that means the transitional government has failed to spearhead the process. So do you prolong a transitional government? Or it's better to dismantle the traditional government, have one entity that wins power, let them take charge, other than having this category of leadership, if I may call it. For the viewers who don't know the meaning of category is cooking mixed food and mixing food with sauce together. So I think it is better to have one entity and say maybe, for example, Riek Machar has one, or Rebecca Garanga, she's the president. Then you judge her according to her performance as the head of state. But as we talk now, nobody's in charge and everybody's in charge. The government is to whom it may concern. That's why they don't have a constitution. Entities like the UN are insisting that they must go for elections. And I think they have a point, because it is the only way to get out of this stagnation. But the challenge with elections is mainly two. How prepared are the contending parties? And how prepared are the civilians and civic actors, especially the absence of voter and civic education? So in the meantime, if we can have a process that prepares civic and voter education, that prepares electoral process, the election process to commence with voter registration, voter update, voter cards, and then the political parties prepare and offer their bids. I think it is the best way forward, however much confusion there is, because the transitional government has failed. To extend the life of the transitional government, you need to go back, get the signatories of the peace agreement, get the guarantors of the peace agreement, and convene everybody to extend the life of the transitional government. I think it is best to get out of it.
And some of the guarantors
The challenges
have their own problems, like
Yes.
Ethiopia.
The challenges is who are the guarantors? It is Kenya, Uganda, Ethiopia. Ethiopia is in disarray.
Sudan also, yeah.
Sudan is a failed
mess,
transition also out of the protests. Kenya is busy with their elections. Uganda is busy abusing the rights of their own citizens.
And they're also
So-
fighting their neighbors around.
Yes.
All neighbors are fighting
And
theirs
then we are in DRC, and then we have closed borders down south. So what is the scope, or
So-
what is the governance survey or barometer in the Great Lakes region?
So are you trying to say that maybe they learned the bad manners from the guarantors? Since South Sudan is a baby of few years.
Same for Kenya. I think Kenya is somehow, with a few challenges, managing democratically better than the other guarantors. So although it is more or less like a competition of who is taller amongst the pygmies. But going away from, from the situation of South Sudan, what is the barometer, the governance barometer in the Great Lakes region? I think the Great Lakes region still hold their place of dictatorship, authoritarian regimes in Africa as a continent. They are still the dark spots. If you look at the countries quickly, let's look at Uganda. We started with Uganda and the state of human rights. Really is a state of governance in Uganda. We cannot re-emphasize that more. Let's look at Burundi. Burundi is more or less a failed state, and there's nothing to write home about. Let's look at Tanzania. It's degenerating, also on the front of human rights,
Actually,
closing
Tanzania,
civic space.
by the way, Tanzania is a middle-income failed state.
And the authoritarian emergence of Chama Mapinduzi,
Yes.
the party in power. If you look at Rwanda, Rwanda really is a country you don't discuss in terms of democracy. They only fare well on aspects of a bit of development. But not democracy.
Actually,
You-
maybe we
you
can say
meant
they
to
are
say
a
gorillas.
benevolent
You meant to
dictatorship.
say they do well in the gorillas and
Whatever it is,
Right.
at
It
least
is a
they
benevolent
score
dictatorship.
better on that area, but not the governance. Then you look at the DRC. Really, DRC has been, for now, the sick man of the world, not just the sick man of Africa.
And us who associate with it
Then
closely.
you look at now East African community, which is the core of the Great Lakes, admitting DRC, pushing to admit Somalia. I think they just want to be the new IGAD. They just want to concentrate on conflict, and they might lose their focus of economic integration. As much as they talk in rhetoric on expanding the economic market, yes, DRC has the population, has the space, has the resources. But if you look at people benefiting from trade with the DRC today, first is South Africa, then we have India, we have Zambia, and I think the East African community only does 10% trade with the DRC, and that's amidst the free trade area under COMESA and African Free Trade Area. So bringing it under East African community does not put anything new on table, because it has been a free trade area for us as Uganda and general as the East African community.
Maybe it wants to be like another Tanzania with one foot in the east and one in SADC.
Maybe, but thank you very much, Sarah. Aboneka, bring you to Kenya. We've discussed South Sudan. Bring you to Kenya. Kenya's electoral democratic experiment, has it really come of age?
Yeah, thank you. Allow me make a comment on South Sudan. Some are wondering, if you have no constitution, what framework is going to regulate the elections you're going to conduct. You can say, so is there an electoral commission? Are they going to hire, do we even have, okay, probably we have an ESC observation electoral, but it's an observation. Like, what is going to organize the election in South Sudan? What is it? And like Sarah says, that the other forces are asking them to, but it will be very bad for Africa for someone to come and organize an election in your country and then say they voted.
The other person.
Yeah, and then say South Sudan voted, but you don't organize the election. It will be very bad for Africa.
But maybe, Michael, a little additional
to that,
information. There is a version of the South Sudan Constitution that was ratified on 7th July 2011 before independence of South Sudan on 9th. The Comprehensive Peace Agreement suggested that this constitution should be amended. So what is to address the issues that should have led to the conflict? So they can use the old constitution that they had at independence to do elections.
Yeah. So actually that makes sense now, because then you have a regulatory framework, because all laws emanate from the constitution. So I think that let them not be in a hurry. Because you see, that is going to be your first. You don't have to just, rush. But let me come back to the issue of Kenya. Let me use this language. It's not, it is, you are only a fool if you're a leader and you're only thinking about winning around your country. These borders were just created. You have to, as a leader, as any person, you have to look at the geopolitics. How is it playing? The politics in Kenya is going to affect Uganda. The politics of Uganda is going to affect Kenya. So it is very important that even when we discuss, we don't always just look at Uganda. And I'm glad this show is expanding, because we don't operate alone. Now, let me say this. I am happy, at least for now, that as the Constitution of Kenya stands, the President Uhuru Kenyatta is not returning on the ballot. As it stands. That is a plan of transition as it is. That you can be in Kenya and witness another president come in and another one goes. On the face of it, I am proud of that. That Kenya has reached that level that President Uhuru Kenyatta is not returning as a president. And I hope that he can manage it well. There has been a problem earlier with all these issues. I just appeal to him that let him manage a transition. It is his time to write the legacy right. You write your legacy right. This is the time. And Kenyan politics affects us much. Okay? Because almost 80% or 90% we derive on Kenya. Our imports and all these things. So you are only a fool as a leader if you only look at your country and you don't look at the geopolitics. So the Kenyan elections always affect us. You remember in 2007, there are people who have never returned to Kenya. They are here. And some of them have national IDs. Yes, people are still here. They have never left. That one also affects us. People always migrate when the elections. Do we have space for them? Do we have land for them? But overall, I have read the ratings. The temperatures are high in Kenya, and I only hope that the elections go as planned. President Uhuru should be now charging up to hand over power, whether it is William Ruto or whether it is whoever is going to come. I've been following Miguna. I don't know whether he's going to come and stand, but he says Ruto and Uhuru and Raila are the same, But we will leave that to Kenyans to decide. Let the voters decide. But like I said, at least I am happy that the voters are deciding. And not new faces, but new people without the incumbency. the vote and the campaigns and the elections without the incumbents is very good to watch. It's highly competitive. You saw the other day when everyone was unleashing their campaign, they show pictures of Raila Odinga in the stadium, and other people saying, by the way, they took the angle where he has no people, and then others are showing, right, Ruto. And that competition is healthy. The incumbent is out of the question. But the incumbent should also be out of the question in reality, okay, as the president. So I am happy that as it is, of course, everyone has their own issues, the deep state issues and what have you, but that one should inspire the brothers, the big boys of ESC. Yeah?
Are they there?
They are there. I think they are only 3 for now, the 3Ks. So the so-called big boys of this club, others are not talking, but the big boys should be inspired that Kenya is going to go into a transition. And I pray that let it be, and the President Uhuru should facilitate that. Quickly, as I wind up on the geopolitics. Now, who admitted Congo to ESA? Is it the clubs, the big boys clubs? Is it the people? There can never be integration without people. The same happened for South Sudan. I was doing a lot of work on East Africa affairs, by the way. I was one of the pioneers of East African Youth Ambassadors. We would go to all these countries and preach about East Africa. That time we asked South Sudan that let South Sudan be admitted on observer status as we watch. That time they were fighting a lot of human rights issues. Fast forward the heads of summit, they admit them. So people need to integrate. You don't force integration on people. So we believe that for Congo, I hope we can benefit. I don't know whether it was, I don't know why we quickly, because that debate hasn't lasted like South Sudan. Everyone is rushing to Congo. We are yet to understand why everyone is rushing to Congo. Why is everyone taking their army there, including Burundi? You know, everyone is going there. There is a political, geopolitical problem or situation maybe people are solving that we'll get to. But it is important. Look at, if our borders are closed with Rwanda, okay? We've recently been fighting with Kenya over pouring our eggs and milk and everything.
Generally broken in Senate, to summarize it.
Yes. You know, so if you're fighting with Kenya, you're fighting with Rwanda, and then what do? You need some other big brother, Congo. Then you say, you talk to your big boys, they admit him. So, but I think that we can't play politics of picking single brother in the big brother club. That let me go and work with this big brother to defeat this one. The integration is finished. Because people need to move freely. For how long are the borders going to be open? And that also affects the way work happens. So I think that people should integrate naturally and don't force the integration on people. Yes.
Interesting, Aboneka. You want to add on something on Kenya?
Yes. Of course, Kenya is a very interesting case. I have referred to Kenya before as an oasis of democracy in a desert of democracy, as an oasis of calm in a desert.
That this used to be for Tanzania. Tanzania used to be known as a safe haven.
Yes.
Until when
the
CCM degenerated under Magufuli.
Yes. Because actually,
very
you see,
unfortunate.
economically, by the way, Tanzania advanced under Magufuli. Tanzania actually crossed over to a middle income country.
But
because of its democratic credentials, someone can safely say that is a country that is a middle income failed state. Because let me tell you, societies that are not anchored in democracy, whatever development they have is not durable, is not sustainable. You saw what happened in Libya. The Libyan lira was actually heavier than the American dollar. And in Libya, you finish school, you get an apartment. Even if you're not working, you get an employment allowance and just keep partying. Life continues. But where are they? what actually that tells us is that human freedoms, rights, and dignity
Are important.
are a very important aspect of
Overall.
development.
Sustainable development.
Sustainable development.
Yes.
So Kenya is a very, by the way, Kenya, even in its history is unique from Uganda. We had one constitutional conference in Lancaster. You see, one constitutional conference in Lancaster, but Kenya had 3 constitutional conferences. You see that? In fact, those guys debated properly what they wanted as a country. And by the way, the Kenyan 2010 constitution is a back to 60s in terms of constitutionalism. Because in that Lancaster, the biggest debate was what form of government do we want? Kanu said we want a Republican arrangement. Then KADU, which was Kenyan African Democratic Union, of Roland Ngala and Arab Moi, said we want Majimboism, which is regional administration. So the negotiation there was between, do we have a centralized state, and we have this. So actually that has been the debate in Kenya so Kenya has actually been moving in zigzag fashion with their politics. Even the contest between Raila and Ruto.
But now they are firm on devolution. And if the BBI and the good components of BBI had passed through, they are still on that road.
Yes, but what means that, meaning for them, the triumph of Kenya, their triumph has been devolution, decentralization, dispersing power. And having local decision-making processes.
They applied that a lot, yes.
Local decision-making
processes. Counter is strong.
Yeah. So, as for the contest between Ruto and Raila, they are still back to 1960, just like their constitution was back to 1960. Because one of the fears of KADU, Moi and Ngala, was that a Kikuyu-Luo alliance was dangerous for the other small units. That is why they needed Majimboism. But now you see there's still an alliance now because according to the latest polls, by the way, Raila already commands 50% of Kikuyu. He actually needed only 30% to win that election, but he now commands over 50%. The entire Kikuyu business elite, Mount Kenya Mafia,
the big boys.
the big boys. You saw the debate over Citizen TV being biased. Citizen TV supporting Raila. The Ruto people were complaining. So these guys are still back into 1960. We see political oligarchies trying to re-emerge and say, no, we are the ones who are entitled to shape the future of this country. It is not the ordinary people. So the question, therefore, because the two of you are saying that, let the ordinary people vote. And Ruto, by the way, Ruto has also been consistently saying that this election is between the political oligarchs and Wanjiku. Wanjiku must decide who becomes president. And Wanjiku is like the ordinary Kenyan person. But let the ordinary Kenyan person decide. But really, in politics in Africa, has Wanjiku ever decided? Or as an ordinary man?
But at least they have an
opportunity.
As we turn into a conclusion.
Okidi is becoming a bit provocative. Because in a multi-party dispensation, there is nothing wrong with building alliances. So what the alliances are doing is swaying the vote of their support base. Kenya has advanced in its multi-party dispensation and have built political bases. Although most of these political bases are supporting powerful families. And that's why Kenya, some families are more powerful than political parties. And can even organize, like Jubilee. I don't know whether now Jubilee Alliance, whether it is still standing or it was just for that election. So that it is common in Kenya to form alliances for just an election period, get power, and that alliance is done. Now the amended political parties bill on alliances has tried to put a limit as to when you can form a political party and register it to contest for elections, which I think is good progress because Kenya has been forming political parties up to like the 2 months to voting.
Yeah.
So now they are trying to regulate that, but there's nothing wrong with building alliances and showing your political basis to vote in a certain direction, so long as it is done democratically and there is a free and fair election.
Yeah.
Thank you very
So
much,
in
Sarah.
conclusion, just
yes.
to conclude, for me, the point I was actually making is that when you look at Kenya's history, there has been a complete, there has actually been a good separation between the military and the state.
Yeah.
And Kenya's contest
there's no state
is always
capture.
very heated, but you do not see the military coming. The military wait for you to sort out your mess and then they salute whoever. So Kenya, meaning Kenya, right from the beginning at independence, it clearly chart out, they cut out their work clear on what would be the content of their nation building project. And I think they got it right, and that is why they are, I call them as an oasis of democracy.
Thank you very much,
in the region,
Okidi. And of course, as we are tending towards the end,
Yes.
our time is fast spent. Aboneka, I just want you to just give your way forward,
Yeah.
and also your parting shots on the way forward for our democracy as a region, but also the economy as Uganda.
Okay. Thank you. You know, what is interesting is until leaders stop looking at ordinary citizens as votes, yeah, then we won't have we won't have any, you know, they won't take them serious. They won't respect their human rights. Because what are you? You're just a mere vote, and that's it. You're just a mere vote. Let me use the word. They'll come and use you, squeeze a vote out of you, kneel, come and bury your people, mingo posho on the, you know, do everything, just squeezing a vote out of you. After that, that's it. Until they understand that citizens are not a mere vote, which is called votography.
Autocracy.
Yeah, votocracy.
Yeah.
Then the future of Africa will change. Secondly, we need to also now thinking about what works for us. I've been arguing that representative democracy is a fallacy. And we now think about what works for us. You can't have 500 people there. And you're saying they're representing me.
With nowhere to sit.
With nowhere to, with nowhere to sit. Okay? I have LC1, LC2, LC3, LC4, LC5, woman MP, who by the way man votes for. You have the youth. I have over 10 people
Workers
representing me.
Now the old ones.
Even the
also.
workers MP also represents the MPs because they're also
The
workers.
elders.
and the elder.
Okay? So how am I going to hold accountable the youth MP I don't vote for? But of what value do they add to me? So, example of Toji Patako, like Okidi, like is the author of that. When what they were supposed to do is to say, I have consulted my constituents. 70 say Jikwateko, 30 say Tojikwatako. That's all you need to do. You represent both views, not to come and say, according to me, they have said yes. No. How about the views of the others?
Minority.
Lastly, the president and his party, and now the prime minister, they have continued to say, you are having bad services because you voted opposition. That is terrible. You're a government for everyone, whether they voted for you or not. And in fact, the people of that area, if you don't have a road or what have you, and because of the way you voted, actually that means that you should not pay tax to the government because you didn't vote it. So they give you your tax and you sort yourself in your republic.
So you've been also stuck with the economy, because I was going to give you a final part on the economy also.
Economy is that we are in recovery, but we are planning too much to recover. Well, you know, we are wasting away and what have you. The money that went to the Uganda Development Bank, how many have received it or not? This is a time you're rushing to Myoga. You've not evaluated Operation Wealth Creation. So we need to have, I think, people think on the feet and also implement, because the economy needs to recover. Subsidies have to come in. Who is receiving this money? you're giving someone money to build a mall. How much money is the mall going to give to the Mwanawinchi downtown? What is it? You're chasing away hawkers as an RCC and saying, I told you to go on tennis, but I've reconsidered, go on 16th. I don't want to see you there. Where should they go? Is that economic recovery by chasing hawkers away? You allowed them, and now you're saying go.
Thank you very much, Aboneka. Sarah, your parting shots?
On human rights,
Okay.
human rights are not granted by the state. I want to call upon citizens to protect their human rights. We have instruments to use. Let's all say no to evil. And it's easier for an ordinary person to identify evil when they see it. We have seen evil. We have seen impunity. Let's reject impunity in this country as a people. On the economy, I think it's time for politicians to listen to the economists. The private sector have done their scientific survey on what damages COVID has caused to the economy and what needs to be done. They have 8 issues, including tax waivers. They have particular taxes they need waived, proposals on how to easily access credit, proposals on how to open the regional markets and stop the warmongering over eggs, chicken have closed to the border, and closing of borders by politicians, which disrupts the economy. And then they have also another need of how to increase the local purchasing power of the citizens. And that includes less tax. Unfortunately, we see the government taking a reversal stand, like I have said, demanding huge billions of money to renovate State House amidst a collapsing economy because of a pandemic, and you want to renovate your luxury as a leader. I think really we joke too much. On regional peace, still it's the politicians. It is the politicians. The East African Treaty says integration will be people-led. The politicians hijacked that mandate of the people. They have messed it up. Can they hand over the mantle back to the people? Because they have screwed up whatever they are doing. On governance for the year, we saw the violence in by-elections in Kayunga. I predict there will be violence in all by-elections in Buganda, because the ruling party, having been voted out in the January last year elections, want to forcefully capture political territory in Uganda and assert themselves that they have some semblance of support. So the citizens should watch out and reject that impunity.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sarah, for those closures. Okidi, finally.
Yes. For me, I think whatever we've been discussing here today is something relating to values. Human rights, these are values. Democracy, these are values. Constitutionalism, these are values. So I think we should invest a lot of energies in coming up with a more comprehensive strategy. Lawyers should go to court to defend human rights. Even in our own families, by the way, because democracy is lived, is actually something you master when you practice it. You see that? So even in your homes, do you practice those values of democracy? Our curriculum, does it have a civic component that makes our young people civically competent to engage in a democratic society? Is our education system preparing people who, like PLO Lumumba say, just keep on following English football and less interested about these governance issues? So we also need to look at our curriculum, because some of us actually think one of the misrule of Uganda is maybe because leaders like Museveni never went to kindergarten. Because if they ever went to kindergarten, you know very well at kindergarten. Me, I went to Christ the King Nursery School here, in Christ the King Church. We were taught that when you're going back home, stick together. That is a basic lesson on unity. You know, when I spill dawa tea on this table, I must clean it up. We were taught at kindergarten, clean up your mess. So if everyone in government cleaned up their mess, we would have a better country. So this thing is about values. It is at our own individual level. It is also at the macro level, which is the state. And we need to just intensify the struggle, because at that equilibrium point is where we shall have a better society. Even the economy we are talking about. The people messing up the economy, if they ever
But
went
on
to
a
nursery
lighter
school.
note, is Okidi sending our leaders to kindergarten?
Actually, on a more lighter note, I want to say, can we have remedial nursery education for our leaders?
No, that ends our conversation well. Because of time, I don't want us to go deep. Thank you very much, of course, my dear panelists, for honoring our invitation today. Thank you, Okidi, for coming through. Sir, of course, for being with us, and of course, Michael, for your
I've
maiden
enjoyed my
appearance.
maiden, and I'm going to come back.
Thank you
But
very
let's
much
go
for
to
committing to
nursery.
that. And of course, with the nursery basics, I think it's for you, the viewers out there, to know whether this is the right time for us to go back to the basics. And of course, this is always the Civic Space TV, where such engagements are, and that's where you get informed to this level. Thank you very much. Of course, the discussions are ongoing on our chat show UG. This on Twitter, the hashtag is rolling. And of course, as usual, go to YouTube, Civic Space TV, subscribe, hit that subscribe button, and be part of these conversations every Friday. But also important on Civic Space TV, every day from Monday to Sunday, we have programming that runs there from 2 to 4. Please be part of these conversations, engage. Also send in your request to be part of these conversations where you feel you can really add a brick to our governance in the country. Thank you very much. My name has been Masesa Demiano. May God bless Uganda.